Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV interview. I'm joined today by Marcus Lasarow. He's the founder and CEO of CashD. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Great to be with you and great to meet you.
Great for you to take the time. Now, Marcus, let's start at the beginning. What is CashD? When did it start? And what features and benefits does it offer businesses and their employees in 2022?
Good question. Thanks, Alex. Well, CashD is a real-time payments platform, allowing workers to access money they've earned in real time, instantly. But let's just go back a step. I've been involved in technology for 12 to 14 years. Specifically, I was mostly focused in the products and services space initially, deploying applications via the native software of Android and iOS. And that culminated in the sale of a motor vehicle application to Pickles Ventures. At that point, I saw human capital rising. And I was looking for the gap, that light bulb moment, and CashD was born. And I started CashD in early 2018, heavily focused on human capital, where I think the growth is today.
So it's not CashD, but Cashed.
That's exactly right. Now, a lot of people do say CashD. However, the correct pronunciation is CashD.
Oh well, I'm glad we sorted that out because it just looks like that. I remember there was a company called BenQ, and for the first few days of their launching, they told all the journalists, "Oh, our name is Benk. It's Benk," and we all said, "That's crazy. You should be BenQ." But no, Cashed sounds a lot better than CashD.
Back home in Africa, when you were walking the streets, and your chest was out like a peacock, the saying would be, "Are you cashed up?"
Yeah.
Meaning, do you have cash in your back pocket?
We use the same terminology here in Australia.
And you're feeling good at that point. You're cashed up.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's where the name was born.
So you are fundamentally transforming the way people get paid and can access their pay ahead of their traditional payment cycle, which is obviously very cool for employees and the companies they work for. So how does CashD integrate with the company's existing payroll system?
Yeah, good question. So on that, let's just go back a step. Let's say 10 years ago, you worked at McDonald's and your shift was a couple of hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. When you finished your shift, your manager would give you an envelope with cash. It wasn't, it was the same at Myers. It was the same anywhere. Why is that not happening today? So we've got this old, antiquated, old school legacy technology issues called pay cycles. These are man-made things. Pay cycles could be weekly, could be fortnightly, could be monthly. So with regard to integrations, all we simply have to do is integrate with a company's payroll or workforce management solution. That means, you're clocking in, you're clocking out, or their HR solution. And we only really need two fundamental, call it operational controls or retrieval of data from the payroll or workforce or HR. And those two things are the source of truth of the worker, who are you, and where do you live? And the second thing is whether you're salaried or timesheet or casual, so that we can build what is known as an accrued wallet for you in real time, which translates to, if you're earning, your wallet increases, which means you'll have access to your money. So the integrations are actually very simple. They're not complicated.
And are they using the APIs that most platforms have these days to share information with other business programs?
Yes. I mean, today, having open APIs is quite common. We don't need thousands. Technically, we only need 4. And we're pulling those APIs across maybe today 15 to 20 different payroll, workforce, and HR solutions. And it's not uncommon to have an open API in today's age.
Yeah,
assuming
absolutely.
you don't, we have alternatives as well. So for the small to medium-sized businesses, where we've got integrations with the likes of Reckon or MyOb or Xero, who are traditionally looking after that small to medium-sized business. We've got alternatives where we don't necessarily need to integrate into their payroll solution, and we can still build an accrued wallet and offer their workers real-time access or instant pay.
Okay, so the question that business owners will want to know the answer to is how, well, I mean, you've explained it's easy to implement effectively with existing systems, but what does it cost a business to offer this service?
Yes, so here's the key. The key is that we empower the employer to make that decision that you just asked. So for instance, Alex wants to take his $100 today. Who pays Alex? So there's 4 options we give to the employer. The employer could pay you. We, CashD, can pay you. A third party could pay, or it could be a combination of all 4. So with regard to who funds the worker, there are plenty of options around that, and we leave that option to the employer. With regard to the cost of the service, who bears the actual cost of that $100 going into your bank in real time? Again, we empower the employer to make that decision. So for instance, if there's a transaction fee, the employer sets that transaction fee, either a dollar amount or a percentage. And if it's a SaaS model, for instance, an employer could have 1,000 employees, we can charge an agreed mutual rate of, for instance, a set dollar amount per month per employee, like a license model. But in order to get traction, penetration, at least adoption in Australia, we have to empower the employer, educate them to make this decision for their workers. Human capital is their most important asset. So if we can come to a mutual agreement on how we deploy this, it's actually very easy for the employer to switch it on.
So how long has CashD been in business? And what was the spark of insight? I think you mentioned it before about the name, but what was the spark of insight that sort of gave you the idea that this was a genuine problem and you had a solution to fix it?
Yes, so around the world, and this is not just Australia, there's a massive gap between workforce management solutions and payroll. What that means, if you finish a shift and your manager needs to approve your timesheet for those 3 hours, it may take a few days, may take a week. Only then is your approved timesheet sent to payroll, which is a different solution. And only at that point, based on your pay cycle, are you paid. And I'm sitting back thinking, this is crazy. There's 2, 3, 4 weeks could go by. What happens if you're on a 30-day pay cycle? Everything today is on demand. Everything is instant gratification. Why not your pay? So when I saw that gap, I thought, there's got to be an easier way.
And there wasn't.
And there wasn't. Yeah. It didn't exist.
And what year did you have that insight?
2018.
So
but the light bulb moment was I couldn't find an employer in Australia that asked their worker a key question. How would you like to get paid?
And when?
And when? Now, some would like monthly, some would like weekly, some would like daily, but no one's asking that question. And it's by time employers realize that staff are important to them, ask your staff, how would you like to get paid? And you'll be surprised by the answer.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a bit more about the back-end system, the platform that manages the CashD experience?
Yeah. So uniquely, I would say globally, and I challenge any like or similar solution to CashD, we've got what is known as a web administration environment. Call that our engine. It has a beautiful visual layer, and we hand this over to a prospective employer. And within that environment, the employer can manage their entire payroll or payments process. Inside there, we've got features and modules that allow for responsible lending, meaning we've set controls and limits in that solution to allow the employer to say, you, Alex, I know you've got $100 available that you can take today. However, we're going to set your limit at 50% of your allowable balance. So you can only take $50. But let's say Alex is not happy and you go to your employer and say, I need that 100. You can then request from your HR manager or your respective, boss and say to them, can you increase my 50% to 75%? Inside that web administration environment, your manager can do that in real time and allow you to draw more than your 50%. In addition to that, we've got a lot of security and limit controls for the business itself. Let's say we go to an employer and they've got their payroll is, say, $1 million a week, but they only want to allow 500,000, half of their available payroll, accessible for early wage access. There's that limit control in our solution as well. So there's a myriad of, call it, beautiful features that are unique to CashD inside our web admin environment, which is the engine which we deliver to the employer. So keep in mind, we are strictly business to business. We're not a B2C solution, which means that everything we do is aligned with our respective employers.
And do the employees use an app to access the money, or a web interface? How do they interact with the system when they're out and about on their devices?
Yeah, good question. So you, the employer, have now engaged CashD. In 3 steps, you're now, an early wage access adoption company. Mm-hmm. You then get to click a few buttons and invite your employees or workers to use the cash solution. The worker gets a link, and that link is to download an application from the iOS or Google Play Store. They download CashD, the worker. Now, that could also be white labeled. It doesn't need to be branded CashD. And the worker then, once they log in through 3 steps and call it an authentication process, they then get published in Accrued Wallet in real time. So in summary, the employer invites their workers to use the cash solution, which are on the iOS and Android Play Stores. In addition, there's a web version in the event a worker doesn't have a mobile device.
I'm thinking that a crude analogy would be, like the payday loan services, but this is done without the ridiculous interest rates. It's done by the company. It's not some dodgy third party. And it's done with incredible granularity, allowing the company and its employees to have the right mix and match, which even has that extra added flexibility you spoke of before, while also making sure that the employee doesn't run out of money before the end of the month. So it sounds like it's very sophisticated and mature. You must have had some incredible growth since 2018.
We have. Let's just go back on something you just mentioned there. Buy now, pay laters, payday lenders, credit card advances, personal loans.
They're expensive.
All of these high interest bearing intrusive, tools that people are using today.
Debt traps and all the rest.
Correct. Now, how do they work? You've got to go and sign a digital loan agreement, might be physical as well. You then have your bank accounts scrutinized, maybe 3 months, 6 months. You then have to sign up to a direct debit so that they can get their money back. And let's assume you get paid on Friday. Come Saturday or Monday, you might not have the money to pay back that direct debit. So guess what? You, Alex, get a default, which is then on your credit file. And this is all because you were paid on Friday, your bills went out late Friday afternoon, and you didn't have the money on Monday. So all of these guys are now feeling the pain of high debt rates. And if you just have to look at some of them and see the market values today comparative to a year ago, the debt is climbing. So with CashD, there's no direct debits. There's no loan agreements. There's no security required. There's full transparency between the employer and the employee. So the question to an employer, if they don't adopt early wage access, what are your workers using?
Yeah.
They are using payday lenders. They are using credit card advances. So the responsible alternative, adopt CashD. So our growth, yes, like that.
One of the things that happens in organizations which IT managers don't really like or appreciate is the creation of shadow IT. Instead of using OneDrive, they'll be using Dropbox or Google Drive or something else. And suddenly there's this, security risks, there's data going here and there, it's not done by the correct policy. And so a company creates and mandates their own internal systems and wants to dissuade the usage of shadow IT. In this case, your employees, from what you were just saying, are already engaged in shadow finance services to their detriment, which is actually bad for you, because if your employee is happy, he's not going to be doing a good job at work. And so this helps to eliminate that and bring it all in-house and give your business a way of remunerating people and rewarding people in ways that just weren't possible before.
Exactly right. So think of this exactly. This is an employee benefit. But then you've got to ask, what is the employer benefit to this? There's four key ones. Why would an employer adopt this solution? One, you can attract better talent, quality talent. Two, you can retain that talent, because the alternatives are far worse out there in the market if you're not providing early wage access. Three, you get enhanced productivity immediately, which then translates to happier workers. So there are plenty employer benefits. For the employee, this is their money. It's your hard-earned money. There is no justification in my mind why any employer should not give instant access to hard-earned money to their workers in real time. I can't think of a reason. And if cash flow is tight, we provide the funding. So there's still no reason. There's no barriers to entry here. And it's not mandatory. You'd rather have it than not have it.
Yeah. And
because the alternatives are far worse.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's different for every company, depending on their size and revenues and all the rest. But what might the interest rate to the company be if they're using you as a lending service to make sure that the pays are paid? What's the short version around that?
Yeah, so what we do in that instance, keep in mind your pay cycles are weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. So the lending period is very short. So typically you don't need a lot of money to fund these solutions because your money is cycling every week or fortnight. So if a company turned around and said, Cash, you finance it, the exposure we give to an employer is annualized. So we use an annualized rate, which in effect is a very small portion of that weekly or fortnightly spend. And that rate is negotiable with the employer. If it's something that's not affordable, we negotiate around that rate, and it's got to be in line with market conditions. But because the lend is short, the annualized rate that we provide to an employer is very attractive for us to fund.
And presumably it also helps you as a business having to manage this money to not be able to accrue big debts like the BNPL companies have done with their customers, because the lending period is so short, and it's for an amount of money that is sort of constant and only growing or decreasing when employees come and go. And so the risk to you is a lot less, and that obviously would make your financiers and funders and banking partners much happier too.
Spot on, Alex, because it's all about, risk. To mitigate risk in the fintech environment is critical. And
we're seeing that, as you mentioned, with those falling share prices of those BNPL players. I mean,
yeah, I didn't say that, you said it, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
With regard to the exposure or mitigating the risk, our inherent risk is that the company, the employer, doesn't pay their workers on payday, because that's when either we get paid back or they get paid back. Because a simple example, you earn $1,000 a week and you've withdrawn 100 on Monday, you're due to get 900 on Friday. So come Friday, if you don't get, payroll is now activated, you getting 900 and either we getting back the 100 or the company. The risk is the company folds at that point.
Like a lot of those, like a lot of those construction companies that we've seen litany of. Yeah.
That inherently is our risk. It's a small risk, but nevertheless, it's still there. But we are somewhat protected, but it's a far more responsible model than a B2C. And we do, we govern by AUSTRAC, so we do KYC on all our companies, and we've got to ensure that they can and have the ability to pay their bills when and if they come due. So for their most important asset, their workers, we hope their pay run does happen, and it should.
I don't know if this is commercially sensitive or not, but have you had to let any customers go because they became financially unviable, or has that not as yet happened? Because you've helped
Not as
companies
yet.
be, more responsible with their funds. Well, that's good.
Yeah, given our KYC processes and the simplicity of the solution, to date, touch wood, we haven't had any failures.
Yeah.
As well as there's no debt from employees. It can't happen because if pay run happens, everything's reconciled at the end of each pay cycle. So it's a very clean solution.
Yeah. Can you tell us about some of your customers and maybe a success story or two?
Yeah, sure. So when we initially started, we found very strong success in the contract management space, soft serve companies. What I mean by that are nurses, carers, security guards. And then I would say we struck gold. We entered into what are known as channel partner agreements with very large publicly listed companies who don't have one employer, tens of thousands of employers. So when we entered into these channel partner agreements, we could deploy our solution en masse to their respective customers who are employers, not one at a time, but scale. And we found that most certainly in the contract management space, which are workers that are governed by either timesheets, casual workers, contractors, a lot of invoices going out. Our solution is also very geared towards salaried or full-time workers, but our initial success was in the casual or contracting space. And that's where we're growing quite fast today. I can't release it today, but in a couple of weeks, we're going live with a very big contract management business who manage a payroll of 500 million on an annualized basis. So that's quite big for us.
So is CashD only available in Australia? And if it is, are you going to expand internationally?
So what makes it very easy for us is our integrations with our respective payrolls are global integrations. So whilst we think of some of these payroll solutions in Australia as just restricted to this territory, it's not. So the good news is because those integrations are in global territories outside of Australia, we can switch them on quite quickly. And with open banking and cross-border payments today, we can initiate a deployment within a few days and have a customer up and running in another country. But in saying that, it's not our focus today. Australia is most certainly our focus. But yes, we have most certainly global aspirations.
Now, you did mention this earlier in answer to a previous question, but can you please just recap for us again the customer onboarding process?
So there's two steps. The first step is to onboard the employer. Because there's an integration with their payroll. The employer logs in to an application, iOS or Android or web, and within 3 steps, they registered. Once they registered, their workers are published within the web admin environment, and the employer or us invite their workers. The workers get a link, and the call it employee onboarding process starts. The employee clicks on that link, opens the cached or white labeled application, downloads it obviously to their iPhone or Android, and within a few clicks, they get what is known as a published or an accrued wallet that they have the ability to withdraw instantly.
And does that process take a day, a few days, a week? What's the average?
It could happen anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
that's efficient.
Very. As long as the integration's in place already, whether MyOb, Xero, Reckon, KeyPay, Astute, whoever it may be, 5 to 10 minutes for the employer and probably under 2 minutes for the worker.
Sure. Now, I always do like to finish on some personal questions, but is there anything else we should know about CashD that I haven't already asked you?
Probably a lot, yes.
Can you think of one more thing we should know about? I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, not at all. So the biggest challenge we have is educating employers in this era of open banking and real-time payments, educating them to adopt these type of solutions. Because it's a mindset. for them to adopt a digital fintech environment for a payment of their workers, that's a challenge in order to get them over the line on that. So my answer would be, we are the responsible alternative comparative to what's out there. And that's where we need to position ourselves. And as much media or marketing that I can do to get out there to educate employers that this is a responsible alternative that's going to create a better workplace, attract better staff, retain better staff, or retain your staff, increase productivity. Those are the things that I need to get out there. And the more I talk about it, the easier the journey will become. That's probably one responsible alternative.
So just to change gears a little bit, I always like to ask, as I said, some personal questions. Can you please share a memory of your first computer?
Oh, wow. ZX Spectrum. They had the equivalent of handball. I think they called it brick wall.
Yeah, it would have been like Pong,
Exactly.
or it was as we were recording, last week was the 50th anniversary of Atari and the game Pong. And it's kind of, how far gaming has come since then. But yeah, the ZX Spectrum, we would have been typing games in BASIC. And
it was like a tiny, like a little HP.
I remember it. Had the rubber chiclet keys.
Exactly. And then I went to a friend's house and I saw this thing called a Commodore 64.
64, yeah.
Alex, I thought all my dreams had come in, games and the graphics.
Next level.
I said to my mother, I need one of those. I said, what is that? What does that thing do? I think it was shortly after TVs came in.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that ZX Spectrum, then that Commodore 64, and that probably changed my view on technology or the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you also sort of covered this slightly a bit before, but what is a brief history of your own personal journey in the world of tech, and what got you interested in finance?
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, I was always in the products and services space. I wasn't, in technology and deploying applications, but I was always in that B2B space, and I believed, and you're going to find this one crazy, but whoever controls the data is king. So in previous applications, I always went after the hub of data, and I was always looking for scale with technology. How do you do this? And the addressable markets and making it applicable. And my last application was very successful when I sold it to Pickles Ventures. But with CashD, I was entering into fintech, completely different world. CPA qualified, so I'm an accountant, so I've had some exposure, to financial services, etc. But fintech is a different beast, and you need scale, and you need adoption, and you need user acquisition. And that's the exciting part for me, because it does scale, and you control so much data that you almost become very data rich with all the possibilities of reading that data and what it means for your partners. With technology and open banking today, anything's possible, and that's what excites me about the fintech space, most certainly, but more so geared towards human capital.
Yeah. We live in such a sophisticated and mature world. I mean, I like to say that for all our advanced technology, compared to the minds of sci-fi writers and what hopefully is inevitably coming in the future, as long as we don't blow ourselves in a nuclear, financial, environmental, or medical catastrophe first, is that, the best is yet to come. And, the technology we have today is sort of still in the black and white era of tech.
It is.
And yet it is so sophisticated and mature when we look back at the last 50 years. I mean, I'm 47 as I speak, and I lived through most of that, as probably you did, that entire sort of post-Pong era. And what a ride it has been.
Well, you know what, the future, so just a glance into the future here with CashD.
I was going to say, my next question is, how do you see the next couple of years evolving for CashD? And then separately, as a follow-up question, how do you see CashD in the age of the metaverse, when AR and mixed reality glasses should be as commonplace as smartphones and tablets are today?
Yeah. So I've spent a lot of hours, days, weeks, months thinking through that. CashD, with regard our first deployment, we've got a 3-phase deployment. Early wage access is just the start. Truly, it's just the creative hook to align with employers to adopt this open banking or real-time payment solution. The next step, which is not today, but it's coming, is the deployment of more employee engagement tools that are linked to early wage or real-time payments. And I mean, just to give you an example, you'll go to JB Hi-Fi, you'll tap with your card, and that will come out of your accrued wallet immediately in real time. That's not too far away. We can do that with BPay today. Jumping forward, why should a company just pay human capital in real time? Why not pay everything in real time? Remove, and remember this one, Alex, remove the ABA file process.
And what's that?
Do you know what that is?
No, please tell me.
So every company in Australia, when they paying for something, they uploading a file from their payroll when it's finalized, and they importing that into their internet banking. Now, they might have a live feed, but it's a manual process and it's an exposure process. So you're uploading from your payroll into your internet banking and then you're paying. That process is antiquated and should be removed. No one's done that yet. We've got a solution that if a company onboards CashD for early wage access, the immediate next steps into the future, why shouldn't the company pay their accountants, their lawyers, or their trade creditors with the click of a button? We've got all the data, it's all sitting there. So with regard to real-time payments, companies will adopt this. It's going to take time, it's going to take education, but eventually, not just their workers, but everything will be paid in real time through the one solution, and we will remove, finally, the ABA file process, and everything can be done from a central solution, provides security, prevents fraud, and companies will adopt this, and they're going to have to, and it's just a matter of time.
You mentioned instant gratification before, and one of my favorite sayings that I picked up from somewhere over the years is that with the problem with modern youth today is that when it comes to instant gratification, it's not instant enough.
This is true.
And you're helping to solve this problem. Yeah, that's right. They all want it yesterday. They want it before they knew they needed it. That's right. And we live in a world now where the just-in-time nature of the past, 2 or 3 decades is at serious risk because of war and inflation and logistics and COVID and all the rest. And so, anything that can help on demand still be there is a great benefit to modern life as we know it.
Absolutely. I've got a famous saying, bringing back the cash economy via technology in real time.
Well, cash is king.
Always has been, and will continue to be.
Now, my second last question to you is, what is some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
There's probably 2 sayings on that one that I've adopted. It's not the height of your logic, but the depth of your enthusiasm. So things I've learned, perseverance. If the doors are closing, other doors will open. Just keep going. Momentum creates momentum. A wave creates another wave. And the other one is probably a little bit more personal. People don't really care how much you know. They want to know how much you care.
People never remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel.
Exactly right.
And on your first one,
it's not the height of your logic, but the depth of your enthusiasm.
It's all about shifting perspectives. When you see that rock in the middle of the road, it's not an obstacle, it's an opportunity to find a new way around it and move forward.
Exactly right. Correct.
So, Marcus, what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers and to your current and future customers and partners?
This is your hard-earned money. Employers who have their most important asset, their human capital, that's their most important lifeline of their business, look after them and provide them with what is for them the most important, their hard-earned money in real time, instant access as they earn it. I can't make that more.
You can't emphasize it enough.
I can't shout that loud enough. And it doesn't have any disruption or effect to the employer's current model or business. So why not provide this to your workers?
Making sure that your workers are happy ensures that the workers help you get cash flow. And just as you want cash flow, so too do your employees. And this is a system that clearly brings that back into stark focus and actually enables it to happen.
Exactly right. Look after your workers, they'll look after you.
Yeah. Well, Marcus Lasarow, founder and CEO of CashD. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, to learn about this impressive innovation, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
Thank you, Alex, and absolute pleasure meeting you today. Let's do it again.
Yeah, would love to. Bye-bye.